well ahead of the quota, more than 3,500 votes in excess. How do you see the count going after that?
Yeah, that's right. Paul Donnelly has topped the poll here in Dublin West. Has been close a number of occasions in the last few elections, but has finally pulled it off. So my congratulations are to him. I'm just short of the quota, so should take the second seat. We've two Fine Gael candidates here. Third seat probably going to Jack Chambers of Fianna Fáil, and last seat between Ruth Coppingers of the Socialist Party and Radical Gorman of the Greens. So that one's really too close to call at this stage.
And Joan Burton there, long-serving deputy for that constituency, is losing on this occasion.
It looks like that, yeah, unfortunately. But from my point of view, just really want to thank the people of Dublin West for electing me again, trusting me again. This is the fourth occasion on which I've been elected as a TD for Dublin West. Our vote is up slightly, but not up as much as the Sinn Fein vote is up. And really want to thank them again for putting their trust in me, and look forward to representing the people of Dublin 15 and Dublin 7 in the 33rd Dáil.
So what do you make of the picture elsewhere in the country? We've had, of course, the exit poll, which we've been discussing, and the tallies, and of course some results as well. How do you assess the performance of your own party?
Well, I think we're going to have to wait until all the votes are counted. It's hard to see where the last seat, or even the second last seat in some constituencies, is going to go. It does seem clear, though, that this is an election which is going to result in a three-party system in the Dáil, if you like, three big parties, Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael and Sinn Fein, all with a similar share of the vote, all with a similar number of seats, probably in the high 30s, low 40s. And that is going to make it challenging to form a government. It's not even apparent that two of the three parties coming together would be enough. They would probably need a third party as well, or some sort of arrangement with a third party or independent. So I think it's going to be challenging to form a government. Obviously, I'll continue to carry out my duties as Taoiseach until a new government is formed, and still believe it's possible for Fine Gael to be part of that government.
During the campaign, you ruled out any arrangement entering government with Sinn Féin. Is that still your position?
It is. You know, I think politicians have to believe what they say and mean what they say. And, you know, we were unequivocal in this campaign that while we were willing to talk to all other parties, we wouldn't be able to form a coalition with Sinn Féin. In part because of in large part because of their policies in relation to crime, on tax, on the way the economy and society should be run, but also our deep concerns about their democratic structures. But I don't want to rehearse all of that all over again. People heard those arguments and that debate before. But regardless of the outcome of this election, that is what we believe. That is our principal position in Fine Gael, that we don't believe a coalition between Fine Gael and Sinn Féin is a viable option. I've immense respect for the people of Dublin West and everywhere else who voted for Sinn Féin, but a forced marriage would not result in a good government.
Well, policy issues can at least potentially be resolved, but if your objections are in principle, that's a much bigger hurdle to get over. Is that what you're saying this evening, that even if there could be some coming together on areas of policy, there are principled objections which you're simply not prepared to drop?
I'm saying it's principle and policy, but one of the principles is also a Fine Gael principle. We went into this government, or into this election, saying to people that we would not form a coalition with Sinn Féin, and it would be difficult to face the people who did vote for us, the 450,000 people who did vote for us in this election, having been so clear about that. So it's not just about Sinn Féin's principles, it's also about our own. We went into this election with a very clear and honest position on our coalition options, and we're going to stand by them.
It's not, of course, just this Sinn Féin surge, it's also the fact that Fine Gael, if the exit polls are borne out, and some of the early indications from the counts would seem to underline and endorse that exit poll finding, Fine Gael is on course for what may be one of its worst electoral performances ever. What's the message from the electorate to you as the outgoing party of government?
Well, I think this is a very different election to previous elections, given that we see three parties emerging quite strongly, as opposed to a very much two-party system like we would have had in the past. Sinn Fein is making gains. They're doing very well in this election. Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael are losing seats. We don't know exactly the exact numbers yet, but that is certainly the picture. But also I think we need to analyse it fairly. Yes, a lot of people responded to the Sinn Féin message, that's why they've done well. But a lot of people responded to our message as well. And that's why we have a similar vote and are going to have a similar number of seats to Sinn Féin, possibly more seats than them.
But it's also the case, I think, in most parties acknowledged towards the latter stage of the campaign that this was the theme of the election, if you like, was change. People were looking for change, looking for something new and something fresh. And it seems that they weren't convinced by your party's efforts at the later stages of the campaign to persuade them that Fine Gael could deliver change. Do you, as leader of your party, take responsibility for that and other failings in the course of the campaign?
Well, as leader of the party, I take responsibility for the campaign, its outcome, and all aspects of it, both good and bad. When you're in government for 2 terms for 9 years, it's very difficult to convince people that you're change makers, even though we have brought about a lot of change, economic and social, in the last couple of years. But bear in mind what we tried to do in the campaign. What we did in the campaign was not a strategy or a tactic. It was what we honestly believed. And what we said to people was that we need to see more progress in housing, we need to see more action on healthcare, we need to see improvements in the cost of living through our childcare plan or through reducing taxes. And in order to achieve all of that, you need a strong economy, and Brexit underpins, our deal on Brexit underpins a strong economy. So we tried to join up the dots between economic security and making progress and making our society a better place. 23% of the country agreed with that message, voted for it, and that's why there'll be a strong Fine Gael in the next Dáil. I totally appreciate that other people didn't agree with that and voted for other parties, but everyone's mandate should be respected. We have a mandate, could very well be the second largest party in the next Dáil, possibly even still the largest. We don't know. We don't know that for sure yet.
Well, you've already tonight again ruled out going into government with Sinn Féin. So what are the options? How is the country to be given a government?
Well, I think first of all we need to count the votes and see exactly where things land. It's seats that are going to matter in the end. And then it'll be necessary for parties to talk. But what the country needs, I believe, is a stable government, one that will last for 5 years, one that can have a solid policy platform. Take the enormous issue that was housing in this election. I believe housing has turned. We're finally seeing house prices level off. Rents starting to fall, the number of people homeless at long last starting to fall. But to get the kind of changes that people really feel in their lives, really notice in their communities, will take maybe another 2 years and will take some changes in policy as well and intensification of other ones. So I think any government that's going to deliver on things like housing, deliver on health, deliver on the cost of living, on all the issues that people felt are important, also delivering on those Brexit negotiations, which will happen quite soon, is going to be one that needs to be stable. And the message that we offered was one of steady economic progress, steady social progress and strong representation abroad. About a quarter of the electorate voted for that, and that's the mandate that we have, whether it's in government or opposition. Those who didn't voted for other parties. And we shouldn't forget as well that while Fine Gael, Fianna Fáil and Sinn Féin each have, somewhere just under a quarter of the vote, there are lots of people who voted for other parties too, Greens, Labour, Social Democrats and others, and they shouldn't be discounted from this mix as well.
Just a final question. You said in the course of the campaign that it would be your desire or intention to try to stay on as leader of Fine Gael, regardless of whether the party is in government or not. I think if you're not in government, you do have to go before the party to face their verdict. Is it still your view that you would remain on, regardless of which side of the Dáil Fine Gael ends up on?
Yes, whether we're in government or whether I'm leading the opposition, I will seek to continue on as Fine Gael leader, and that obviously will be a matter for the parliamentary party once it's formed, but I will seek to do that, and that is what I want to do. Should bear in mind, of course, I am Taoiseach and I remain in office as Taoiseach and will continue to discharge the duties of Taoiseach, at least until such a point as somebody is elected to replace me, or I'm re-elected if that were to arise. And also, as well as that, I'm leader of Fine Gael and will have to lead Fine Gael through an important Seanad election, which of course is coming up quite soon. And we'll need to make sure that we have a strong Seanad team to challenge to regain some seats that we're going to lose today.
Right, there we leave it. Leo Varadkar, thank you very much indeed for talking to us. The Taoiseach and leader of Fine Gael, speaking to us there from the Dublin West Count Centre, where, as he was saying to us, he expects that he will be elected in the course of this count, and that Jack Chambers of Fianna Fáil also, and then it'll be either Ruth Coppinger or Roderick O'Gorman for the Greens for that final fourth seat. Back with more results, analysis and commentary after this short break.
So welcome back to our coverage of the results of election 2020. I'm going to be chatting to our panel here in just a moment. But first of all, we wanted to bring you some of the counts that have been coming in. I think we can take a look first of all at Limerick City, and you can see there that Sinn Féin's Maurice Quinlivan has been elected. He's on over 11,000 votes. The quota just over 9,200. Willie O'Dea, Fianna Fáil, just below the quota there. Kieran O'Donnell, Fine Gael at over 6,500. Brian Ledden, the Green Party, 3,252. And the independent Frankie Daly, a lot of people talking about Frankie Daly. He's very close to Brian Ledden's first preference votes there at 3,200. And then you have Maria Byrne, considered protege of Michael Noonan, Fine Gael, at 2,998. And on down you see James Collins, Fianna Fáil, and Jan O'Sullivan. And moving on now to Cork South West, where independent Michael Collins has been elected on 11,712 votes. Christopher O'Sullivan, Fianna Fáil, coming in next. Tim Lombard, Fine Gael, 5,865. Paul Hayes and Holly Kearns, Social Democrats, doing well there on 4,696. And Roscommon Galway is next. Michael Fitzmaurice, well over the quota there, quota of close to 11,500. He's on over 13. Dennis Naughton, also independent, of course, doing well there on first preference. Claire Curran from Sinn Fein, over the 8,000 mark, followed by Fine Gael's Aisling Dolan. And then it gets very interesting. Fianna Fáil's two candidates, Eugene Murphy and Orla Layden. There were question marks over the decision to field two in that constituency, and you see where they are there. Eugene Murphy at close to 5,000, Orla Layden close to 3. And moving on now to Mayo, lots of interest in this constituency as well. Michael Ring exceeding the quota, Rose Conway Walsh exceeding the quota, both elected. Then you have the two Fianna Fáil candidates, Dara O'Cleary and Lisa Chambers. Dara at over 9,000, Lisa Chambers at over 6,000. Michelle Mulhern then from Fine Gael, and Alan Dillon, Fine Gael. Of course, this is the constituency of Enda Kenny, who has retired from politics. You see the Green Party, Saoirse McHugh there, 4,177. Aontú's Paul Lawless at 2,500, Joe Daly and Jerry Loftus, and that's one that we'll certainly be watching. And now we have a look at Louth. Two Sinn Féin candidates are through here on very strong votes. Imelda Munster and Rory O'Murraku. I was speaking to Jerry Adams on radio earlier on. He was delighted that his two got through here, and we're looking at pictures there from Louth. There is Jerry Adams, Imelda Munster and Rory O'Murraku, both polling very, very strongly there on first preference votes. So that's Louth. Right, let's have a chat with our panellists now. Oisin, are you elected yet?
Well, I think it's I'm leading the poll at the moment, so I've got more votes than anybody else, and I think there
You're
are a
waiting
number
for news.
We're waiting for news, yeah.
I'm just going to stop you there because I think we can go to Shane Ross now in Dublin Rathdown. Just getting the mic on there. I'm not sure, Shane Ross, if you can hear us. If you can hear us there in Dublin Rathdown, Shane Ross, thank you very much for joining us. You can't hear me. OK. We'll come back to Shane Ross in just a moment. Fiona, any news for you? I know I'm keeping an eye on Kildare South, but no counts in as of yet.
I'm keeping an eye myself. It's a tense time, and Sinn Féin obviously got a very good result there. But party-wise, we're just 1% behind, and I certainly would be hoping to retain the seat that Fianna Fáil had. And in Kildare North, we're in a fight also to keep the two that we had the last time. But I think that we will sustain the 4 that we had coming into this.
It's an historic night for Sinn Féin, but when you were canvassing, did you know that this was coming?
Well, I think we as a party identified the issues and around housing and around health, and we certainly had proactive policies in relation to dealing with them. But with the engagement, particularly I think over the last week, people were very angry about housing and about health. They didn't necessarily want to engage about the proactive policies that we had put in place. And there certainly was a feeling that they wanted change. And I think because...
Were they telling you they were going to vote Sinn Féin?
Some were, but some said that they wanted change, and they acknowledged that within the constituency Fianna Fáil was strong, but they felt that we had done the wrong thing in terms of the confidence and supply, which we had done in terms of stability and in terms of Brexit, which didn't come up on the doors at all.
I think we can go to Shane Ross now in Dublin Rathdown. I hope you can hear me there, Shane Ross. Can you just bring us up to date with what's happening at your own count centre?
Yeah, my understanding is, and I'm not completely up to date with it, but my understanding is Catherine Mutton has been elected, which is congratulations to her, and her surplus is just about to be distributed. And so I think the position is I certainly will not be elected. I'm not out. I'm not eliminated now, but I think the gap between me and the other candidates is too wide for me to catch up at this stage.
And is that a surprise to you tonight, or is it what you had expected, given the campaign and the canvass and what people were saying to you as you went through that campaign?
Look, it's not altogether a surprise to me. I was hoping to be elected, but Dublin Rathdown punishes its poll toppers frequently with a consistency which is quite alarming, and it's nearly always cut down to size those who topped the poll the time before. It's a very volatile constituency, and I was taking nothing for granted in this, and I'm not totally surprised. Of course, I'm disappointed. I'd very much like to have served in the next Dáil, but that's politics, and I want to congratulate those who are successful in Rathdown, and congratulate those who are calling for change, and to say, look, I wish them well, and I hope they can introduce the changes which they promised, and I'm sure they'll do their best.
Have you decided whether you'll stick around in politics now, or are you done?
I wonder what you... Just wait for me to be eliminated first, would you? And then I'll think about it. I haven't been eliminated yet, and I haven't made any preparations for any other eventualities.
I certainly don't mean to be rude. I only asked you that because you seem to have accepted that this was what was going to happen. And forgive me, I didn't mean to jump the gun on you there.
No, that's fine.
It's quite unusual, isn't it, in the national scene, that we have what looks like two Fine Gael candidates going to be elected there in that constituency.
It is, particularly as with the trends that we see here today nationally, and I think they've run a really good campaign if they manage to do that. I imagine that they divided the constituency very effectively, and they have two very good candidates, Neil Richmond and Josepha Madigan, and Catherine Martin is also a very, very fine representative. So it may be unusual, but they'll certainly represent the constituency particularly well if they make it, but it's not all over yet. Shea Brennan is still in there with a shout, as is, I think, Sorcha Ní Cormac, the Sinn Fein candidate as well. So it's not over, but it would be unusual if Fine Gael get 2 out of 3, and more parts of them if they do.
OK, Shane Ross, we'll leave it there for now. We're going to take a look now at count in Tipperary.
Ahern Garrett, Fine Gael, 6,206. 6206. Brown Martin, Sinn Fein, 10,004. 10004. Cahill Dolores, Irish Freedom Party, 521. 521. Cahill Jackie, Fianna Fáil, 7,940. 7940. Farrell Sandra, Fianna Fáil, 2,233. 2233. Goldsborough Imelda, Fianna Fáil, 4,082. 4082. Hannigan Joe, non-party, 4,715. 4715. Healy Seamus, non-party, 5,829. 5829. Kelly Allen, the Labour Party, 7,857. 7857. Lowry Michael, non-party, 14,800.
OK, so Michael Lowry there, as you can see, exceeding the quota, and the celebrations have begun. You were looking at that, Noel Rock, with interest there, that count. Just interesting to see Seamus Healy's number there, just over 5,000. Well, he's heading for 6, but it's not looking good there for him.
No, it seems to pose a significant challenge for him. I'm looking, of course, with interest at Garrett Ahern's figure. He's a good new candidate for us and a good prospect there, it looks like, to take a seat. Fine Gael, people will remember, of course, failed to take a seat in Tipperary in 2016. So it looks pretty promising, I think, with the Mary Newman-Julian transfers there, that he should take a seat in Tipperary, which is a gain for Fine Gael.
All right, well, we'll take a look at that. That's only count one. Can I talk to you about what your party leader, Leo Varadkar, was saying to Brian Dobson a little earlier there? And he was talking about Sinn Fein when Brian asked him, you know, about the possibility of looking again at talking to Sinn Fein. And he said he wouldn't, based on policy and principle. Is that sensible and right, given what we're seeing playing out tonight?
Well, look, he's the party leader, and that's his prerogative. I think we should be talking to anybody. I certainly think we should be listening, and in listening mode right now. I think it's quite clear that people have had a very decisive verdict in constituency after constituency around the country. What we see is Sinn Féin surpluses, Sinn Féin topping the poll, Sinn Féin potentially leaving seats behind them on the pitch. Accordingly, I think there's a need for all parties, including my own, to listen to what's being said, and to listen to people's frustrations on health and housing, rather than ruling anything out.
So what he's saying, you do not agree with that tonight?
No, I wouldn't say that. I'd say it's certainly worthwhile talking to and listening to A, the view of the electorate, and B, all parties at the table. What I would say, though, is I think it's going to be quite difficult for any set or any combination of parties to form any kind of government right now, based on the numbers that I'm seeing before me here and that we're all seeing before us.
So what do we think is going to happen then? Chris, we might come to you on this. I mean, when you hear Leo Varadkar there saying, look, on policy and on principle, I'm not going there, and really we have to stand by what we said in the campaign, where does that take us tonight?
Well, I'm not surprised. Leo has proven himself incapable of listening to the people and to the public over the last number of months and years. I think that's why Fine Gael find themselves in the situation. There's Leo himself standing at the second count, still hasn't even got elected yet. That's unthinkable for a sitting Taoiseach to be sitting in that situation. I think if him and his government had listened, they may have been in a different place. But I think it's very clear people want change. I think this has been some time in the coming. This has been in the making since 2010, 2011. I think people opted for Fine Gael in the meantime to maybe provide that change, and they have realised now that Fine Gael, just like Fianna Fáil, haven't done what's needed in the interest of the people. They have served the economy, they have served a little elite, but they haven't acted in what's the best interest of the people. And I think now what we're seeing is an opportunity for certainly those parties of the left to come together, if possible, and try and form a government going forward.
But as people look at their screens tonight and they look at the vote share, you can't deny that it's a conundrum now, isn't it? When it comes to government formation, it's a conundrum.
It's undeniable that it's a conundrum. And it's equally undeniable that clearly, and I got this a lot at the doors, people, because of the confidence supply agreement, see Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil increasingly as two sides of the same coin. That posed a long-term problem, I think, for both parties. And I think that's something that, both parties need to reflect on, perhaps, going forward. Because there's a lot of talk preemptively about coalitions between the two and about confidence supply agreements between the two again. I'm not sure that's necessarily wise, and I think it's potentially premature at this stage.
I think it's been particularly difficult for Fianna Fáil, as I've said, and while it's a tough day for Fianna Fáil, we have had tougher days, and we still will more than likely be the party with the greatest number of seats. So there's a real paradox there, but I think until all of the results are in, we have to respect the process. We have to see what the numbers will be like tomorrow afternoon, when all of the final seats have been filled, and I think that we have to respect the mandate that's there and listen to what the people have said, and negotiations have to start after that.
What do you think happened, Fiona? Because I mean, it's not so long ago, it's only a couple of days we were talking about, Fianna Fáil might hit 60, will they hit 60? The mid-50s would be an OK day, wouldn't be great. The last prediction I heard from Michael Gallagher was 43 seats. So what do you see? What happened?
Well, I think part of the problem was that the pundits and the commentators were actually talking Fianna Fáil up. And I know that was a problem in my own constituency, and a lot of people saw Fianna Fáil as heading the poll and having safe seats, and decided to use their vote in a different way to put another party, and Sinn Féin more than likely, in that situation. So I think the commentators got it wrong. A lot of the forecasting, both by Paddy Power, by Ivan Yates calling it, he got most of the constituencies wrong. And I think that caused a problem for Fianna Fáil.
Fianna Fáil caused a problem for themselves. So I think that Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael started to come out with the same line. They both said, you know, we're very much against Sinn Féin. Sinn Féin are the Reds under the beds. They're this great threat and everybody has to avoid them. And they made the whole election campaign, they suddenly changed the conversation to everything's about Sinn Féin. Suddenly everybody was talking about Sinn Féin. It was hard for us in the Green Party to get a word in edgeways. It was Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael saying the same thing about Sinn Féin.
The Green Party did okay, and I mean, in fairness, you see that in the results.
But I think you actually created this surge for Sinn Féin. I don't think it would have happened without Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil attacking Sinn Féin.
One of the biggest concerns that Fianna Fáil had was in relation to the manifesto, in relation to the policies of Sinn Féin, which were anti-business, anti-agriculture, and costed a 21 billion as opposed to the 11 billion.
Policy is negotiable, and Fianna Fáil is often running campaigns where they're giving big giveaway budgets. Policy can always be negotiated, and that's why Leo Varadkar's claim that he couldn't do business with Sinn Féin because of policy just doesn't stand up. I mean, sit down and say, OK, well, let's work out a compromise in policy.
Can I ask,
so I think they created
how you take
surge.
that criticism that, you know, there was so much piling on Sinn Féin that actually that caused some of this surge?
I'm not necessarily sure about that. Like, I mean, I think there's just an immense frustration out there with regard to certain issues and how they're being treated, or how there's maybe not urgency around health and housing in particular, and that's coming back to us again and again. I don't necessarily think it's Fine Gael's fault somehow that Sinn Féin have surged in these polls. I think if you look at, say, Leo Varadkar early doors had always wanted Mary Lou McDonald to be included in the leaders' debates. He didn't want Sinn Féin excluded. He wanted them to be there for their policies to be scrutinised and for them to be, part of the debate, absolutely, but also scrutinised in the same way as Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil.
We can't get away from the fact, too, that when Fianna Fáil had their opportunity during a number of debates, their spokespeople and front bench were dire. They didn't have the policies to start with, and then the people who were out front selling them weren't the people that, you know, that the public wanted in prison. When it comes to housing, the public, I think, see Owen O'Brien and see that's the guy. He literally wrote a book on housing. He's the guy I want in there. Louise O'Reilly on health. She's the woman I want in there. Pierce Doherty on finance. They're the spokespeople we want. I think Fianna Fáil, when it got to that point, didn't have the quality of that front bench, and that's proven very...
That's absolutely not true. And we also focused on quality of life issues around justice and around supporting people in their own communities. And education was always something that has been very important to us. And I think we were very clear in terms of our education policy, our policies in terms of supporting commuters and quality of life.
We're going to leave that one there because I've got to go back into my colleagues now. Back to David.
Thanks so much, Claire. And I think we can go over to Cavan Monaghan, where we're joined by the Minister for Business, Heather Humphreys. Good evening, Heather Humphreys. Cavan Monaghan, one of 10 constituencies yet to have a first count, but I believe it's expected that you will be elected on that first count, along with Matt Carthy of Sinn Féin. Is that how you're reading it?
Yeah, sorry, I'm just getting, you're sort of breaking in and out there, David. Yes, we have, the tallies say that Matt Carthy from Sinn Féin and myself will get across the line after the first count. So obviously I'm very pleased that the people of Cavan Monaghan and indeed North Meath have put their trust in me once again, and I'm happy with that.
And do you have any idea where the other 3 seats are likely to go in the end of the day?
Well, it looks like from the tallies that the 3rd seat will go to Sinn Féin, and the 4th and 5th seat will be between the Fianna Fáil candidates and indeed my own party colleague T.P. O'Reilly. It all depends how the transfers, how the eliminations go, and as you know, the swings and roundabouts of a count you can be late at 1 minute and you can be very deflated the next minute when you're waiting on the different transfers to come in or whatever. So I'm still hopeful that we could take a second seat here in this constituency.
It has, however, been a pretty poor day for Fine Gael. It looks like being a pretty poor day for Fianna Fáil and an absolutely brilliant day for Sinn Féin. What does that say about government formation? Is it time for Fine Gael to reconsider its refusal to talk to Sinn Féin about a government?
I have been very clear, and the Taoiseach has been very clear on this, that we will not be entering into government with Sinn Féin. However, we are willing to talk to all the other parties and to the different groups. We have just come out of a confidence and supply agreement, and we have worked very closely with independents. So we have a track record on working with other parties. But as I said, Sinn Féin's policies are miles apart from ours, so we will not be entering government with Sinn Féin.
Could you foresee yourselves doing a deal with Fianna Fáil then?
Well, obviously we have to wait until all of the votes are counted. We feel that in terms of, the pundits had Fine Gael written off a week ago, and I think that the election has turned around for us in the last few days. We have to see what the final results are, and when we get that, we'll be able to sit down and we have to sit down with clear heads and look at exactly what the final result is, and we will talk to the different parties then at that stage.
OK, Heather Humphreys, thank you indeed for joining us from Cavan Monaghan. Let's go not too far away to Meath East. And Fionn, we can see in Meath East percentage of the vote here. Sinn Féin doing very well, 24. Fine Gael ahead, 28.3. Fianna Fáil on 19. Changing the share of the vote. Sinn Féin, massive increase, up 10.4 percentage points. Fine Gael down, Fianna Fáil down a bit more. And when we look at the actual state of the poll after count 2, Darren O'Rourke of Sinn Féin elected there on the first count, I think. Helen McEntee after him on 7,800. Thomas Byrne of Fianna Fáil on 6,000. Regina Doherty, outgoing minister, on 4,000. Looks pretty much like one Sinn Féin, one Fine Gael, one Fianna Fáil.
Yeah, Darren O'Rourke wasn't all that far off. He only needed about an extra 1,000 votes this time. He's got more than enough as a result of this surge. Again, that was the battle at the southern end of the constituency, in around the commuter belt towns, in around Ashbourne, Dunshaughlin, Ratoath. Well, Helen McEntee is up the far end of the county where her own father represented it, kind of John Bruton. Big Fine Gael farmer territory to say the least, so she was always expected to be quite strong as well. And then Thomas Byrne hanging on as well down the southern end. So as the week was progressing, this was the way it was looking like it was going to pan out. So your first cabinet minister, Shane Ross. So that's two cabinet minister casualties today already.
Right. And Jennifer, one of the big stories of the last general election was Fianna Fáil's recovery in the commuter belt in places like Meath, in places like Kildare, in places like Wicklow. And that's kind of gone back a little bit. I mean, Thomas Byrne looks like he's going to hold his seat, but the level of support isn't there anymore. And a lot of the angry commuters that are worried about quality of life issues, worried about being stuck in traffic jams, they've turned to Sinn Féin looking for answers. Yeah,
and as well as that, a lot of the people who would be stuck in the commuter belt would be people who would have suffered an awful lot, say, coming out of college with the crash that happened. So all is not forgiven by them when it comes to the Fianna Fáil vote, it seems.
And we might just look at the overall total of seats filled so far. And Fionn, I mean, this will gladden the heart of any Sinn Féin supporter. 21 seats filled out of the 28 filled so far. Only one Fianna Fáil seat filled, and that's actually the Count Corder, Sean O'Friel, who was returned automatically. So sort of not great so far for Fianna Fáil, but as they keep saying, they are going to pick up seats as they go along, and they're going to be in the fight for a lot of last or second last seats. Yeah,
but they're also in that fight. They could lose a few of them. Cork East is still in the mix. They might pull that off. They're now in trouble in Roscommon. They're in trouble in Galway East, which is a big shock. They're in trouble in Mayo as well. Obviously Kildare North, as that progresses, won't be looking too good for them. The Dublin easy wins that they were looking at don't seem to materialise in a whole lot apart from Dublin Northwest. So as the night goes on, the Fianna Fáil's point all along was that they had a strong bed of candidates, that they were the ones who would be able to pull in the extra votes even if the party vote struggled, and that's certainly been put to the test now. OK, and let's just take a quick look at the percentage of the vote. Now, this is incomplete because it's only 29 of the 39 constituencies, so there's another 10 still to come in. But what it shows is, if it stays with that, the exit poll wasn't too far off, Jennifer. They're kind of within the margin of error, I think, although Sinn Féin doing a bit better. Sinn Féin on 23.7%, leading the pack, ahead of the three. Fianna Fáil in second, Fine Gael in third. Who would have thunk it? Well, if you're looking at the opinion polls, you would have gotten a guess at it. But
to have three parties so neck and neck within that margin of error, that if you were to look at it from the local and Europeans, you would not have seen this happening whatsoever. So I think there's going to be a lot of research and a lot of talk about what has actually happened to that Sinn Féin vote between the Labour, the local and Europeans and the general election.
The irony here is going to be that Sinn Féin, you normally on a day like this, you get a big surge of vote, you come out top, you get a seat bonus, you get more votes, more seats compared to your vote percentage. That's probably not going to happen for them. They're only going to get flat exactly what they get in terms of their vote share and their TE share, because they don't have candidates in extra candidates, Dublin South Central, Dublin South West, Waterford, Laois, Offaly and Dublin Fingal. So they've left those 6 TDs. That's where they would have capitalised on having this substantial share of the vote. So ironically, the other 2 parties are actually going to benefit from that in the end.
OK, thank you both for that. Over to you now, Brian.
Thank you very much indeed, David. Let's have a word with our guests here in studio. We've been joined by Lucinda Creighton from Vulcan Consulting, also, of course, formerly a Fine Gael TD and founder of Renewa. Also, Gerard Howland, columnist with the Irish Examiner and one-time advisor to the Fianna Fáil party. I'm going to just interrupt myself, because I think Jim O'Callaghan is standing by. Is that right? From the Count Centre, I believe, in Dublin Bay South. Jim O'Callaghan, thanks indeed for coming to talk to us. We were talking a little bit earlier about the situation in Dublin Bay South. What's it looking like now in terms of your own position in this count?
Well, I think ultimately I will be elected, Brian, but it's going to be a long night. As you may be aware, Eamon Ryan was elected. He had a surplus that's been distributed. I think what will happen now is that Chris Andrews will be the next candidate elected. After that, Owen Murphy, and I think I should be able to hold off the threat from Kate O'Connell, who I'm at present around 750 votes ahead of.
Right, so the final outcome there could well be, well, Eamon Ryan's already been elected, Owen Murphy, Chris Andrews of Sinn Féin, and yourself for that 4th and final seat.
Yeah, hopefully. I think that's what people are saying. That's my own assessment of it at present, and it looks like the net effect is that there's been a Sinn Féin gain in the constituency, and it looks like Kate O'Connell of Fine Gael may lose out.
Well, explain this to us then. Why? And because your situation is not unique. There are other Fianna Fáil TDs in Dublin constituencies who are still in a situation where they can't celebrate their election at this stage of the evening. What's happened to Fianna Fáil, particularly in those Dublin constituencies?
Well, I suppose if you look at my own vote, Brian, there's been an improvement since 2016. In 2016, I got 11.5% and was quite lucky to get elected. In this election, I've got 14%. So there has been an improvement here. But you're right, it seems to be the case that in other Dublin constituencies, we seem to have stagnated around 10, 11, 12%. And if there isn't, I suppose, transfers going in favour of you, when you get a vote like that, it's very difficult to pick up the seats. But listen, it's early days in terms of the constituencies in Dublin. I'd be hopeful that we will return with a number of seats in Dublin, but I can't really give you an assessment as to how many as of yet. I've been concentrating on my own constituency.
But we do know that Fianna Fáil has been involved in what it hoped was a process of rebuilding after the election of 2011 with the 2016 election, and you hoped presumably that this one would continue that process of recovery, and it seems it hasn't. It seems at best you'll tread water, maybe make some small improvements. So why has the party failed to capitalise on what looks like the unpopularity of the government?
Well, I think that's a fair assessment that you've given. I think what was clear is that the public wanted change in this election. Unfortunately, they didn't see Fianna Fáil as providing that change. Part of the reason for the increase in support of Sinn Féin is not that people in the past number of months have transformed themselves into Sinn Féin supporters, but is that they obviously identified in Sinn Féin a party that was providing change in its policies, and as a party that you could vote for. In terms of if you wanted to register a protest. I suppose we'll have to, when the votes are all cast and we find out how many seats we have, Fianna Fáil as a party, the parliamentary party, will have to consider what are the lessons to be learned, particularly in respect of confidence and supply. But I think it's probably too early yet to be forming lessons from this electoral outing.
Just one other question, though, if I might. Is it time, or could it be time in that process, to revisit the insistence that your party leader said he wouldn't do business with Sinn Féin?
Well, I think we have to be clear with people. We went into this election very clearly stating that we wouldn't go into government with Sinn Fein or indeed with Fine Gael. And I think we have to be consistent with that. And I don't think it's credible for us within 24 hours later to be saying that, yeah, we'll open ourselves up to opportunities with Sinn Fein and with Fine Gael. We gave a commitment to the public. I was on doorsteps. People asked me, are you going to go in with Sinn Fein? I said we wouldn't. I said the same in respect to Fine Gael. We wanted obviously to secure much more seats than we did, in the hope that we could run a government, a coalition with the Greens and Social Democrats and Labour. That's now looking extremely unlikely. But I don't think we should resile from our commitments, as I think ultimately the electorate would look at us and say, you don't really stand for anything, you're changing your minds within 24 hours.
Very good. Jim O'Callaghan, thank you very much indeed for that. Let me return to my panel. Lucinda Creighton is here, Gerard Howland. We're also joined by Claire Daly, MEP for Independence for Change, and Gary Murphy, Professor Gary Murphy from Dublin City University. Lucinda Creighton, just first of all, how do you assess what we're seeing at this stage of the evening, particularly in relation to your former party's performance, the Fine Gael performance?
Well, obviously, it's a stunning performance for Sinn Fein, and you know, while I think it's easy to sort of say they should have run more candidates, I think nobody in observing politics closely, including Sinn Fein TDs and the leadership of the party, anticipated this sort of surge. So I think that they're going to have an outstanding result, and that's already evident in the fact that they're topping the poll all over the place. In the case of Fine Gael, I think lots of things have gone wrong. There's always the fatigue that can be associated with being in government for the length of time that Fine Gael has. Obviously, there have been strategic errors in the campaign itself, and arguably over the last couple of years as well. I think part of and it's probably a small part of the problem, is the fact that Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil seem to obsess over Sinn Féin during this campaign, and I think the more they concentrated on whether or not they would do business with Sinn Féin, the bigger the platform for Sinn Féin and the bigger the opportunity for Mary Lou McDonald to set herself apart from the two main parties. And I definitely think that has fed into this result, although in and of itself obviously not the only reason for it.
I would perhaps come back to some of those and others as well. If I can go to Claire Daly, because we were looking earlier, Claire, at the situation at this stage from Fingal, which is your former constituency. Louise O'Reilly of Sinn Féin there, elected on the first count with a quota above the quota, more than 5,000 votes above the quota. Your own, the person who stood for Independence for Change, Dean Mulligan, performing on a much more modest 2,500 or thereabouts. I mean, has Sinn Féin been hoovering up the sort of votes that Independence for Change, Solidarity People Before Profit, other left-wing independents would have got back in 2016 and earlier?
Not necessarily. I mean, I think obviously they have taken some of that left-wing vote as being seen to be, I suppose, the dominant opposition, as it were. I think a lot of the sort of left independents and smaller left parties are going to maintain their seats. They may be in a fight for the last seat, but the numbers will probably roughly be the same. My own candidate, Dean Mulligan, he's 26 years of age. He put in a great showing. He'll rival up the ranks. He's not going to get a seat, but he'll have a good performance there. I think in Dublin Fingal, the results look like being as you were, with the same outgoing coming back, but maybe in a slightly different arrangement. So.
I'm just wondering, do you detect a real shift in our politics, or is it that the people who are looking for change are coalescing, if you like, around Sinn Féin? There's
no doubt there's been a seismic shift. Mary Lou is quite right in that. I mean, for the first time now, we have Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael on roughly about 44% of the vote, and they have been in constant decline over the past number of years. So what we have now is the challenge being put to the idea of an alternative government without them. I think it'll be very difficult this time with the numbers, but we're heading into that space, and no alternative government now is going to be possible without Sinn Féin. They've had a great election, no doubt about that, but the key thing is obviously going to be what happens next.
All right, lots more to talk about. We'll come back and talk to Gerard and to Gary in just a moment, but we're going to take a short break before we resume our coverage of election 2020. Now, hello again. You're watching Election 2020. The votes are being counted right across the country at this stage of the evening. I can just check and tell you that we've 29 first counts completed, so there's still another 10 to go where we haven't actually had any count at all. In others, of course, they're powering ahead with up to 6 in Galway East, 5 in Dublin Rathdown, 4 in Dunleary. But this is a long process and still a long way to go. But what can we say at this stage, Gary Murphy, about the story of Election 2020?
Well, I think we can say that this is the most extraordinary election in the history of the state, to be perfectly blunt about it. When you look at Labour's great increase in 1992, where they got 19% of the vote, they were still 20 points behind Fianna Fáil, and something similar in 2011 when you had Gilmore Gale. He was still some 17 points behind Fine Gael. So this is by far, in my view, the most extraordinary election since the other great Sinn Fein wave in 1918, the last time we had an election vote on a Saturday. And the reason is because we see now 3 main parties of the state in and around 22%. It looks like Sinn Féin will actually outperform the exit poll. They're at 23.7 now, and we have people like Mark Carty's vote to come in. He's guaranteed, I think, 2 surpluses, a huge vote in Cavan Monaghan. So my view is that we're in uncharted waters because the party system has collapsed. It began in 2011 with the so-called earthquake election. Fianna Fáil did come back significantly in 2016, but the Fine Gael vote has been declining clearly since they went into government in 2011. We've seen Labour all but dead. So I think we have a fractured party system, and the result is we're going to have very difficult coalition negotiations unless Fianna Fáil and Sinn Féin, which look as if they will get 80, unless they coalesce. But I think one couldn't but say that this is the most extraordinary election in the history of the state.
Gerard Hallan, just to focus in a little bit on the numbers, Sinn Féin running 42 candidates, I think, in the 39 constituencies, and the vast majority of those will be elected.
Yes.
So we're looking into the mid-30s?
Yeah, possibly.
38, sorry. I think they're going to win a seat in Clare, with a candidate there were only, I think I saw somewhere, only had 20 posters up, barely campaigned. When the brand is with you, as it clearly is for Sinn Féin, so they're looking, I think, at winning 37, 38
So maybe 3-4 of their candidates won't make it.
Yeah.
That's
just about Dunleary, Dublin Rathdown, areas like that.
I know of one Sinn Féin candidate who had booked their holidays before the election was called, and they still went on holidays and returned home. I returned home on Sunday and got appears like they'll be elected.
So, Gerard, tell us, what did you think is that? I mean, aside from the very obvious that there's this Sinn Féin surge, where does it leave us? Where does it leave our politics, and where does it leave?
Well, I think rather than obsessing about the politics of it, I think it's just an observation as it reflects very fairly and very well the society we have become. The reason there are no big catch-all parties is because we're no longer a big catch-all society. Society is fragmented an awful lot. We're much more individualised, and this fragmentation politically is a belated, late recognition of the fact of how we live now. In relation to this surge, let's see how long it lasts, but my personal view is that power needs to be vested into this responsibility, or we cannot have a major party on a quarter of the vote permanently outside of government. So that era of the exclusion of Sinn Féin is completely over. And remember, it's only the very late 1980s, was it 89, 90, an Irish Taoiseach secretly enabling persons on his behalf to make contact with Sinn Féin IRA to negotiate a beginning that we have come to an end here today.
I think it's probably a bit more than a fragmentation of our society. I think it's very much a rejection of the 2 main parties that have ruled in this state, and I think that's what we're beginning to see, because when you look at the demographics, it's the younger people, it's those people who are very definitely moving away from Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, and that's been a trend, but it has now accelerated.
We'll come back and discuss this a little bit more. We're just going to go back to Claire in the results centre. Claire.
Thank you very much, Brian. Now I think we can join Catherine Martin, a trio of Greens actually. We've two there at the moment. Catherine, congratulations first of all on your election.
Of 4,752.
Humbling to top the poll in Dublin Rathdown, and I'm very grateful to everyone who voted for me.
Now, will you explain to us who else we are seeing on screen there and your relationship to, we've got in another screen, another person, so explain to people at home who we're seeing.
Well, to my right is my husband, Francis Noel Duffy, and he's the candidate in Dublin South West. And I believe on another screen you have my brother Vincent P. Martin in Kildare North.
And is it looking like all three of you will be elected tonight?
It's hard to call. I know Francis is in 4th place in a 5th-seater in Dublin South West, and I've been told it's all to play for Vincent in Kildare North. But because he's in a different count centre, it's hard to get in contact with Vincent.
Let's do that now. Vincent P. Martin, if you can hear me there, you might bring your sister and brother-in-law and the rest of us up to date with what's happening.
Hi, well, first of all, congratulations, Catherine. Your hard work paid off. I'm delighted for you. I'm sorry I can't be there, but I think I will be forgiven. I'm unavoidably absent because I'm preoccupied at my own count here. And it's a very exciting one, Catherine. I believe I have exceeded 5,100 number one first preference votes, close to 11% of the first preference share, and very much in contention, but far from home and hosed. It's just all to play for. I'm a serious contender, and it will really go down to transfers. So I just fingers crossed.
OK, well, Catherine, that's from the horse's mouth there. And Francis, you might tell us how you feel it's going to go for you, because you're in a tough one there, the 5-seater in Dublin South West. Sean Crowe, almost exceeding by double the quota there. He's on over 20,000 votes. What else is happening there in that constituency?
It's tough. At the minute, I'm in 4th position, and I'm a good 1,300 votes ahead of the next base player in 6th position. So with the right type of transfers, I should be safe, but you never know in an election. There's a lot of votes to be transferred, but hopefully that green friendly transfer vote will be there for me, as it will for Vincent, I hope.
And lots of people were very interested to see how Sinn Fein would transfer. Are you seeing where Sean Crowe's transfers are going in the main? Are they going to Paul Murphy, the Solidarity People Before Profit candidate, or are you benefiting too?
Paul has got a significant amount of those votes. I myself have got about 1,200 from what I can tell. But so that's a really good transfer for myself, and it keeps me, moves me into the 5,500 or thereabouts. So, but Paul will do very well in that vote this evening, and that's ongoing at the moment.
OK, well, thank you very much for joining us, and to Catherine and Vincent as well. Thank you all for being with us this evening. I'm sure we'll touch base with you again as the night goes on. Let's go to Tipperary now and to another poll topper, Michael Lowry. Michael Lowry, can you hear me there?
Yes, Claire, can hear you. Thank you.
Congratulations to you.
Yes, a fantastic result here for me in Tipperary. It's my 6th successive election as an independent. It's my 6th time heading the polls, which is a compliment to my organisation and my team here in Tipperary. We took 18% of the vote, 14,800 number ones. So I'm very proud to have the people of Tipperary renew their confidence and their trust in me, and I look forward to working on their behalf in the 33rd Dáil.
And as you look to the future, I read an interview with you which was in today's paper. It feels like a fortnight ago, but it was today in the Mail on Sunday, where you said you'd be happy to talk to whoever comes looking to talk to you.
Well, the most important thing is our economy, and our economy requires that we have a stable government. I think now it's up to Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil to have a discussion with each other and to decide, what the future holds. The people have had their say. The voice of the people has been heard in the ballot box, and I think there's an obligation and a responsibility on the two main political parties either to sort it between themselves or to make a decision about how they're going to form a government. If that includes Sinn Fein.
The Sinn Fein vote there, Michael Lowry. Martin Brown on over 10,000 first preference votes, an extraordinary result in a really competitive constituency.
Absolutely. I could see the trend during the course of the election. Young people in particular were voting for Sinn Fein. That Sinn Fein vote has been got in Tipperary at the expense of Seamus Healy, who would be seen to be a left candidate. What I heard on the doorsteps from young people in particular is they're not familiar with the past. They're more concerned about the here and now and the future.
And can you talk to me about Alan Kelly's chances of getting elected, being as he is on 7,857 at the moment?
Yes, I would think that the transfers from North Tipperary from Sandra Farrell, the Fine Gael or the Fianna Fáil candidate, and Joe Hannigan, a Labour independent candidate, that their transfers are in that region, and I would imagine that they would assist Alan Kelly to get past the post.
OK, and just as we look at all this playing out over the night, I mean, that's one story, and it's going to take a long time to count all of these votes. But where do you see this going with the results as they are coming in tonight?
Well, obviously it has been a serious defeat for both Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael. They have been rejected effectively by the public, and that trend has set in since the last general election. And nobody anticipated that Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael together would have less than 50% of the vote. That looks like happening. So it's a changed political plan, and I think that both Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael are going to have to make some very serious decisions, and they're going to have to make them quite quickly, because I certainly don't believe that if you were to have another election that the result would be any different. So I think that Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael now need to have a serious discussion one-on-one, and then decide whether they're going to support each other by way of a confidence supply, by way of a coalition government, or whether or not Fianna Fáil or Fine Gael decide to enter government with Sinn Fein. They're really the two possibilities.
OK, Michael Larry, thank you for joining us from Tipperary. Michael Larry there saying that some serious decisions will have to be made by Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil. We'll talk more about that. We'll bring you more results and analysis too on our coverage of the results of election 2020 after this quick break.
Hello again. Well, counts are coming in thick and fast in election 2020. So far, Sinn Fein is surging ahead. The first TD to be elected to the 33rd Dáil was Donncha O'Leary, who topped the poll for Sinn Fein in Cork South Central. Speaking as he arrived at the Dublin West Count Centre, the Fine Gael leader Leo Varadkar said his position on potential coalition options had not changed. He said he was willing to talk to others with a view to forming a stable government to address some of the problems facing the country in the next 5 years, but ruled out any coalition with Sinn Fein.
In this election, Sinn Fein has done very well, and I want to congratulate them and their candidates on doing as well as they did. But bear in mind, we've three parties that got roughly the same share of the vote, roughly the same number of seats, and we all have a mandate, and everyone's mandate needs to be respected. But in order to form a government together, nobody can be forced into some sort of forced marriage or forced coalition.
Well, to the other parties and independents, Fine Gael's Michael Ring has topped the poll in Mayo. He was elected on the first count, along with Sinn Féin's Rose Conway Walsh. Independents Michael Lowry in Tipperary, Michael Collins in Cork South West and Michael Fitzmaurice in Roscommon, Galway have also been elected. Earlier, the Green Party leader Eamon Ryan was elected in Dublin Bay South, and his party colleague Catherine Martin has won a seat in Dublin Rathdown. In the past hour, Shane Ross has become the first big casualty of election night. The independent TD and outgoing Transport Minister was excluded on the fifth count in Dublin Rathdown. He gave his reaction a short time ago.
There's obviously been a huge appetite for change, and those who've represented that very articulately have been successful, and I think it's appropriate for me to say well done to them and congratulations, and I hope they make up a really successful government and they bring about the changes which are necessary.
Another result just to hand, Dublin Bay North. We can bring that to you now on the count centre where we have a declaration.
Of count one. Bruton Richard, Fine Gael, 11,156, 11156. Burke Michael Paul, non-party, 370, 370. Craven Connor, non-party, 418, 418. Garrigan Brian, non-party, 372, 372. Gilroy Ben, the Irish Freedom Party, 771, 771. Haughey Sean, Fianna Fáil, 6,651, 6651. Healy David, Green Party, 5,042, 5042. Heaney Deirdre, Fianna Fáil, 3643, 3,643. Lyons John, non-party, 1,882, 1882. McAvoy Linda, non-party, 202, 202. Mitchell Denise, Sinn Fein, 21,344, 21344. Mulvaney Bernard, Solidarity People Before Profit, 1,409, 1409.
OK, there's yet another Sinn Féin TD elected at the top of the poll in Dublin Bay North, Denise Mitchell. And Fionn, she had been one of the Sinn Féin TDs on the basis of the local election results that had been seen as potentially in trouble.
Yeah, and had a running mate in the last general election and didn't this time around. And of course, that was before the election, I suppose, where Finnean McGrath and Tommy Brewin were also running, so that was looking really competitive. But events flipped everything 2 weeks ago. Indeed. And now it's changed.
And now the interesting thing is there is about 10,000 of her surplus to be transferred. And Jennifer, we don't know how those transfers are going to go because we've never seen this before.
No, it's an absolute unknown quantity because traditionally Sinn Féin were more of a protest vote. Nobody expected them to do as well as they did. Now it's a case of getting in with almost double, there's so many votes spare there, by my rough maths, about 10,000. And where exactly are they going to go? That's what nobody knows.
Okay, well,
so now that's 7 Sinn Féin seats that they've left behind on the table here.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Well, if you want to keep reminding them of that, well, let's look at another constituency where they have certainly left a seat beside. This is Dublin Central, the constituency of the party leader, Mary Lou MacDonald. There she is, 11,223 votes. The quota is 6,200, so 5,000 votes to spare. Who's winning the rest of the seats there, Fionn?
Well, what people were watching down at the RDS this afternoon was, does Christy Burke get slingshotted up the pecking order there as a result of Mary Lou MacDonald going out? Christy Burke is former Sinn Féin, but again, as Jennifer was saying, we don't know what's the pattern. Is there going to be any kind of collegiality to it? The logical explanation that was coming from the RDS was that obviously Mary Lou, Pascal Lunnan would hold on, Nessa Horrigan was going to get elected comfortably, and then it was down between Gary Gannon and Mary Fitzpatrick. And most people were predicting that it would be Gary Gannon who would take what is effectively the old kind of Tony Gregory type seat.
Which is a big problem for Fianna Fáil, because that was one of the seats that they absolutely needed to win. Let's just look again, at Dublin Bay North with the full count in. Richard Bruton just below the quota, only 800 votes off. Aon O'Riordan, 8,127. That's a strong performance by him, perhaps boosted, Jennifer, by one of the very few social media videos that was actually funny. He did a video about his name. And then Sean...
He had a phenomenal local campaign where he has focused very heavily on the local constituency for the last 4 years. And he divided up his campaign into all sorts of different areas and different messages and so on and so forth. So went hyper-local and it worked.
OK, and I think we can go now for results from Wicklow.
We have now the result of the first count for the constituency of Wicklow. The total electorate in Wicklow is 101,332. The total poll was 71,879. That's 71879. The invalid ballot papers were 559. That's 559. The valid poll, therefore, was 71,320. That's 71320. There are 5 seats in the constituency of Wicklow, and the quota, therefore, is 11,887. That's 11887. The result of the first count for the candidates is as follows. Behan Joe, non-party, 2,988. That's 2988. Brady John, Sinn Féin, 17,200. That's 17297. Briggs Sharon, Solidarity People Before Profit, 1,037. That's 1037. Casey Pat, Fianna Fáil, 4,473. That's 4473. Conor Seamus, Ain 2, 1,051. That's 1051. Cox Valerie, non-party, 1,805. That's 1805. Donnelly Stephen, Fianna Fáil, 5,467. That's 5467. Doyle Andrew, Fine Gael, 4,940. That's 4940. Dunn Tom, non-party, 478. That's 478. Fitzgerald Anthony, non-party, 79. Gunning Eileen, the National Party, 399. 399. Harris Simon, Fine Gael, 8,765. That's 8765. Keddy Charlie, non-party, 209. 219. King William, non-party, 20. Larkin John Joseph, non-party, 173. That's 173. Matthews Stephen, the Green Party, 5,634. That's 5634. O'Brien Paul, the Labour Party, 1,727. That's 1727. Snell John, Non-Party, 3,050. That's 3050. Timmins Billy, Fine Gael, 4,679. That's 4679. And Whitmore Jennifer, Social Democrats, 7,039, 7039. As the votes of John Brady exceed the quota, I deem him to be elected.
Well, celebrations there as yet another Sinn Féin poll topper is returned to the 33rd Dáil. John Brady there of Sinn Féin with a handy 6,000 of a surplus to be distributed. In second place by my reckoning then is Simon Harris, the outgoing Minister for Health, with 8,700. And then Jennifer Whitmore of the Social Democrats doing really well with 7,039, and certainly Fionn in contention with the seat. How do you see that one playing out?
The caveat is geography will play a role here. If you look at the top 5 candidates, they're all up in the Bray and Greystones area, right up the top. But the south of the county will transfer heavily to each other, and that's why you would think that Pat Casey, Billy Timmins or Andrew Doyle and possibly John Snell come into the equation at some point, and potentially Pip Stephen Matthews. But you give the first 3 seats, though, definitely to John Brady, Jennifer Whitmore and Simon Harris, the last 2 still to play. OK, that's a really good result for the Social Democrats, who were very keen to do well in this particular constituency, because in the last election their candidate did very well, and his name was Stephen Donnelly.
Exactly, and I think that when people change parties midstream, it tends to annoy the people who voted for them, because they would have voted for them for a particular platform. And if you start jumping horses, people will tend to support the person like Jennifer Whitmore, who has gone in on the ticket for the Social Democrats. OK, thanks for that, and hold that thought. We're going over to Cork South Central, where we're joined by Michael McGrath of Fianna Fáil. Good evening, Michael McGrath. What's happening in Cork South Central as we speak?
Good evening, David. How are you? Yeah, we are just moving on now to the elimination of the Social Democrats candidate. And so at this stage we still have the Sinn Féin TD Donegal O'Leary elected. Micheál Martin will be elected perhaps on this count, and Simon Coveney and myself will have, I think, a little bit longer to wait, but I think the 4 seats are pretty clear at this stage.
Yeah, so it's no change in Cork South Central, and yet it's all changed, because look at the order, look at that vote for Donegal O'Leary. How did Fianna Fáil get things so wrong, do you think?
Well, I'm sure you'll allow me, David, just to very briefly thank all of those in Cork South Central who supported me, whether it be a first preference or a lower preference. It is really appreciated, and I'll do my best over the years ahead to vindicate that. Any day you're elected to Dáil Éireann is a great day. Look, there was obviously a very strong mood for change, and I think Sinn Féin captured that mood better than anybody else. I think it is certainly the case that we may well have paid a price for confidence in supply for the length of time that it went on. It was certainly very difficult for us as a party to carve out a very strong and clear separate identity to the government party, Fine Gael, over the duration of that, and I think that certainly did present a challenge. But look, we'll see what way the final numbers fall. I know there's quite a range still being put forward as to what each party may well end up with, and we could well be the largest party in terms of the number of seats, and then we have to try to make sense of it all in the days ahead and figure out how a stable government can be formed.
And if the best option for a stable government is for Fianna Fáil to do business with Sinn Féin, given the huge vote that Sinn Féin has got, given the appetite for change, is it time for Fianna Fáil to consider doing that?
So look, Sinn Féin have certainly had a great day, and we're watching that all day with the poll toppers right around the country. I come at this, David, really with my finance portfolio, with the perspective I have on the economy, And I genuinely believe, as I did yesterday and before the election, that the Sinn Féin policies would not be good for this country. I think we have a really strong enterprise economy. We have to continue to support job creation, and I don't want to rehash the election debate, but I cannot see how Fianna Fáil and Sinn Féin would in any way reach an agreement on those issues. We are poles apart in relation to the economic policies and where we would like to bring the country into the future. So I just do not see that as a runner.
So does that mean that it's Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael?
But look, I think the votes are still being counted. This may well go for a number of days yet. It's not clear who's going to be the first party, the second party, the third party. You know, there are 160 TDs going to be in the new Dáil, and every one of them has a responsibility to say what role can they play, or are they willing to play in forming a government and in addressing the real issues that have been highlighted right through this campaign, and which Sinn Féin did very successfully capture throughout the election campaign. So there's an obligation on everyone, and we will meet as a parliamentary party in Fianna Fáil in the coming days. We'll reflect on what we did well and things that maybe we didn't do so well, and we will decide on where we go from here. You know, over the last few years we played our part, perhaps paid a price for it, in facilitating a minority Fine Gael government because of the whole Brexit crisis, and you know, we have never shirked our responsibility, but we do need to take stock. We need to see what our final numbers are and take it from there.
OK, Michael McGrath, thanks very much indeed for joining us. Now, we're just going to do one more constituency before we hand over to the colleagues, and this is Wexford, where I think we're on a second count. Johnny Mythen there, the distribution of Johnny Mythen of Sinn Féin surplus. So Brendan Howlin still 3,000 votes off the quota, but 9,900 looking pretty good, as is James Brown, 8,400. Fionn, where does it go from there? Because again, geography plays a factor here, doesn't it?
Yeah, so it looks like Michael Darcy has got the edge over Paul Keogh, albeit very marginally, and that means that Michael Darcy then wins the Battle of Gorey, which squeezes out Malcolm Byrne, who ultimately elects James Brown. The word from down in Wexford is those 5 names up the top, that looks like the way it's going to be going, because Verona Murphy is based down the south, and there's a lot of candidates down there who can transfer her way as well. Obviously, Johnny Mythen topping the poll, Brendan Howlin rock solid, and James Brown, like his father before him, always a really good vote getter.
So the Verona Murphy kicked off the Fine Gael ticket, could be taking a Fine Gael seat.
Could be now taking a Fine Gael seat. She's based down in Wexford, and a whole host of votes down to sweep up.
Now, Jennifer, Malcolm Byrne, who did so well winning the by-election just a couple of months ago, doesn't look like it's working out for him.
No, and that's definitely the swings and roundabouts of politics, because if you look at Johnny Mythen, he would have lost a seat in the local elections, and it's almost Lazarus-like to see how he has now topped the poll from losing his council seat. And as Fionn has said, it is going to come down to sheer geography, because Michael Sheehan, Verona Murphy, New Ross, and then the more north of the constituency then as well, pulling each other together. These
are the margins. I mean, that Michael Darcy, Paul Keogh gap of about, about 120 there at the moment. If Keogh's on top, then Darcy loses out and Malcolm Byrne gets in, and therefore Verona Murphy loses out. So it's literally just...
Everything we've just said could be completely wrong.
No, but not on the present maths, people are down there are saying, no, they reckon that Michael Darcy will be ahead of Paul Keogh, and that'll be the Fine Gael seat. OK, well, we'll keep watching this race, as all of them, with great interest. Thanks for that for the moment. Over now to Claire.
Thanks, David. We're going to take a look at 2 first counts now, starting with Kildare North, and we can take a look here. There's Catherine Murphy, Social Democrats, who has 9,808 votes. The quota you can see at the top of your screen there is 10,190, so not far for her to go. Rada Cronin from Sinn Féin is next. James Lawless, Fianna Fáil, and Frank O'Rourke, also Fianna Fáil, coming in next. Bernard Durkin, Fine Gael, 5,447. Longest standing TD, isn't that right? Noel Rock is still here with me. Vincent P. Martin, we were talking to a little earlier. He's quite hopeful based on that number. Anthony Lawler and Emmett Stagg, you can see there as well, and on down. Now let's move on and take a look at Kildare South. Oh, there's the share of the vote there. So Fianna Fáil leading there on 26.2, Fine Gael on 17.8, and Sinn Féin just coming in third. Sinn Fein there on 17.1. Social Democrats, by the way, they're in purple at 19.3, so they're coming in second with the share. And you can see the change there. And the big story, which is the big story of this election night, is that the Sinn Fein vote is up by 10.5%. A drop there for Fine Gael, most notably of 5.8% for them. OK, I think we can move on to Kildare South. Sean O'Reilly automatically returned. He's the Ceann Corla. Then Patricia Ryan, 10,155 first preference votes. Almost getting to the quota there, but not quite. Fine Gael's Martin Hayden on over 8,000. Fiona O'Loughlin, she was here a little earlier. She was going down to the Count Centre to see what's going to happen over the course of the night on close to 6,000. Mark Wall, Labour there as well. And we move on to the share of the vote. We have Sinn Fein leading the field here in Kildare South at 21.5%. Fianna Fáil next, Independents 19.8% and Fine Gael at 17.1%. OK, Chris, I want to come back to you on something that was mentioned there as people were looking at Johnny Mythen's election. And he's somebody who lost his seat in the local elections, isn't that right? Yeah. And then he comes along and he tops the poll, as so many of the Sinn Fein candidates have done tonight. How do you explain that difference?
Well, there's Johnny, and we'll have seen there with Patricia Ryan in Kildare as well. I think even Darren O'Rourke in Meath, and those areas where the party had difficult local elections. And I think what we're seeing is reflective of a real desire, I think, to fix issues at a national level. And the big issues, of course, around housing and the need to build an economic recovery with our public services, because there can be no economic recovery if our people and our public services aren't at the heart of that, and that hasn't been the case.
So, but do you see them as two distinct things? If a voter is looking at what to do in a local election and a European election,
the dynamics at a local election can be just vastly different from here, where we have an election across the state, and I think that's what you're seeing. And I think with Johnny, and you look at Sinn Féin are topping the poll in Dublin constituencies, but very significant wins in parts of the state, the likes of Wexford, Mayo, Galway, where we haven't had TDs for the best part of a century. So I think that growth in the Dublin and really taking on the lead, but also spreading that out right across the state, I think that's a very significant development.
You're getting mixed messages tonight from Fianna Fáil. Jim O'Callaghan saying we should hold the line here. This is what we said in the campaign, that we wouldn't go into coalition with them, and that's what we should do. Timmy Dooley and Clare opening the door, saying we should have a conversation.
Well, I think the messages were pretty mixed the entire campaign. I think the Fianna Fáil leadership, Micheál Martin, was very strident, I think, to his own disadvantage. But there were messages the entire time from Fianna Fáil backbenchers, from Fianna Fáil TDs and the membership to say, we shouldn't be closing this off. We work with Sinn Féin in the north, and we need to be looking. And at the end of the day, I think they realised that this is going to be an election about the people and about public services, and it wasn't right for both Leo Varadkar and Micheál Martin to be turning their nose up. I think most people seen it as hypocrisy and didn't believe it, and want a different type of politics going forward. And I think that's the type of change you're seeing roll out here today.
OK, and we heard Michael Lowry, Noel Rock, saying, look, there are some serious decisions that need to be made by Fianna Fáil and by Fine Gael, and they need to sit down and talk about confidence and supply in reverse, or perhaps coalition.
Yeah, like I said earlier on, Claire, I think all parties need to be in listening mode right now, rather than cutting off ties with each other. I think it's quite clear that no individual party is going to have the possibility of forming a coalition with, say, Labour, the Greens and the Social Democrats, as was, I think, each of the largest three parties' preferred option at the outset, and it kept being said in debates over and over again. That's now closed off as an option realistically. So it needs to be either some form of coalition between each of the three biggest parties, or some form of confidence supply between each of the three biggest parties. Numerically and logically, they're the only options that are left.
Yeah, I mean, confidence and supply, you see how it worked out in this election for Fianna Fáil. It's not going to be an attractive option for anybody, is it?
No, I mean, in the eyes of the electorate, it effectively was a coalition agreement. That's the reality of it. People who I spoke to routinely said, effectively, they saw Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil as two sides of the same coin, ultimately. So, yeah, confidence supply, I'm not sure it will be an attractive prospect for any party.
But the big development has to be, no matter who is sitting in government after this, there needs to be a step change with regard to housing, a step change regarding public service in general, education and in health. This is what the people are crying out for now, to say, look, We've been told about this economic recovery for the best part of a decade. We haven't felt it. Our public services haven't felt it. We need to see a different direction.
OK, we're sitting here with you watching these numbers come in for the Sinn Féin candidates. And I think it was when Denise Mitchell's first preference vote came in, we saw she was getting the highest first preference of anybody so far in this election, over 21,000. And you're watching all of those votes being given away to other candidates in transfers. I mean, how does that feel?
Well, look, it's better to have the votes and, as you say, to give them away than to not to have them and to wish that you had them. Hindsight's a wonderful thing. There's no doubt that if we had stood more candidates in 5 or 6 seats, we may be looking at a situation very different tonight. But I think overall, going forward, as I say, the real message now from the people is about change in direction. It's about our public services, it's about people and communities in general. I did a lot of canvassing in the Meath East constituency with Darren O'Rourke. And very often you hear this part of the world described as the commuter belt. And the message I was hearing all the time was, we're communities. We're not just a commuter belt, as something tagged on to the city of Dublin to service the city of Dublin. We are communities with needs, with childcare needs, with infrastructure needs. They haven't been met for a decade. That's why government ministers like Regina Doherty are finding themselves tonight on the wrong side of the electorate.
And Darren O'Rourke has done very well there.
The poll.
OK. You're going to leave us now. You accepted your fate very early on today, Noel, isn't that right?
Yeah, realistically, I think I'm starting in 4th place. There are 3 seats. Even though I've improved my share of the vote compared to the same constituency configuration in 2016 by about 400, realistically, it's just the case that there aren't enough votes there. And so, this will probably be my last time in studio with you as a prospective TD. But that's okay. That's life, and it's not about me.
I'm sure you still have plenty to offer, Noel. Thank you very much for coming in tonight. And Chris, thanks to you as well. OK, we're going to take another quick break now. Lots more analysis and counts to come. Election 2020 after this quick break.
Hello, you're watching Election 2020, our continuing coverage of the results in the general election. We're going straight to the Dublin South Central constituency where we have a count for you.
Arda Catherine Fianna Fáil plus 231, giving a total of 5,013, 5013. Byrne Catherine Fine Gael plus 114, giving a total of 5,192, 5192. Collins Joan, Independence for Change, plus 1,747, giving a total of 4,578. That's 4578. Costello Patrick, Green Party, Coentus Gloss, plus 408, giving a total of 4,449. 4449. DC Tara, Social Democrats, plus 326, giving a total of 1,921, 1921. Foley Robert, non-party, plus 36, giving a total of 114, 114. Irvine Serena, the National Party and Party Nasciunta, plus 138, giving a total of 770, 770. Kerrigan Allen, non-party, plus 95, giving a total of 241, 241. Moynihan Rebecca, the Labour Party, plus 235, giving a total of 2,330, 2330. Murray Richard, non-party, plus 213, giving a total of 420, 420. O'Leary Sean, plus 19, giving a total of 57, 57. Smith Breed, Solidarity, People Before Profit, plus 4,794. Giving a total of 9,547. 9547. As the votes of Breed Smith exceed the quota, I deem her to be elected. I will now proceed to distribute Breed Smith's surplus of 888 votes, as it is the largest surplus and fulfills the following conditions. It exceeds the difference between the two lowest candidates. Thank you.
Breed Smith of Solidarity People Before Profit, elected there on the second count in the Dublin South Central constituency. There you see confirmation of the result. She received, by my quick calculation, about half of Angus O'Snoddy's surplus, which exceeded 8,000 votes. She had in excess of 4,000 of those. So that's what's put her over the line now, and the count will proceed. Just a word as we look at those figures from our panellists here. Who'd like to venture some thoughts on where this is going, Claire?
I suppose the issue now is how much of Breed Smith's transfer goes to Joan Collins. Joan Collins has been outgoing TD, an excellent representative of working people, in a bit of trouble maybe. I think Breed Smith's surplus will decide it. I suppose the other story here is that, of course, Breed Smith won that seat in the last election, the last seat, by a handful of votes from Catherine Arda, Fianna Fáil royalty in some ways, who was seen to be guaranteed this seat, but not guaranteed it looking on these figures, which again shows a poor performance for Fianna Fáil in Dublin. Catherine Byrne possibly hang on, but again, Joan Collins can overtake Catherine Arda and Catherine Byrne based on Breed Smith's surplus. So we'll see.
In Dublin South West, when Sean Crowe was elected handsomely with a very large surplus, I mean, thousands of votes went from him to Paul Murphy, had the same effect. Yeah. In other words, Murphy was hanging down the bottom. He's now right up in the middle, and he can be reasonably good.
Yeah, I mean, and Gary, this was absolutely up there in terms of Fianna Fáil's targets on this one, wasn't it? Catherine Ardagh, she missed out by such a small margin last time.
Yeah, probably their number one target seat in the capital. Well, maybe Dublin North West with Paul McAuliffe, but certainly after him. She might win yet. Rebecca Moynihan will go out and there'll be transfers from her, and we expect a Green candidate, Patrick Costello. So if they transfer better to Catherine Ardagh than Catherine Byrne, Ardagh might take that seat yet. There's only about less than 200 votes. Catherine Byrne, who had been written off by Fine Gael, and is certainly a rather resilient character in a constituency that shouldn't be that's quite left wing. But that's going to be very tight over the next couple of hours.
It's a tough constituency for any Fine Gael candidate, isn't it?
It is, and I think, but I agree with Gary. I think Catherine Byrne has been written off on many occasions. This, don't forget, was Gay Mitchell's constituency, and Fine Gael has, consistently represented this constituency for a long time. Catherine Byrne, former Lord Mayor, obviously outgoing minister. I think she's polled a lot better than expected, but it's going to be a very tight battle, I would say, between her and Catherine Ardagh.
And I think Catherine Byrne has a certain style of politics. She's on the ground in the community, and I think Fine Gael has something to learn about that for the future. If it wants to be a major national party, it cannot exist solely in social media or among the middle class. It must have a working class base, and it has failed to do that quite largely. Rather Fianna Fáil, this was their nearest miss in 2016. 36 votes between Catherine Ardagh and the seat. And if they fail here, it's a symbol of a wider failure.
Right. Do I have time to take a quick look at the national picture in terms of the share of the vote, or will we come back to that? Because it was something, maybe we're getting close to the having all the counts in. At this stage we've 33, so there's just 6 remaining. That's the national summary now, the share of the vote, and you can see there Sinn Fein on 23.7%. So in terms of the popular first preference vote, Sinn Fein are the largest, have accumulated the largest number of first preference votes. Now if you look at the constituencies that are still to come, Cavan, Monaghan, Clare, Donegal, Kerry, Longford, Westmeath, Sligo, Leitrim, that perhaps I might venture to say is unlikely to change in terms of the share of the vote?
I think, if anything, the share of first preference votes could increase for Sinn Féin. I mean, if you look at the likely share of votes in Donegal, Cavan, Monaghan places, it's going to be pretty.
So when we're talking about a seismic shift, that in many ways summarises it. When we finally have all these counts in, the likelihood at this stage is that the party with the biggest share of the first preference vote is the Sinn Féin party.
Yeah. And it'll be a refrain time and again in the life of the next all, however long it lasts, from Sinn Féin, from Mary Lou MacDonald.
But we should also say that even though they win, if that's the right word,
fewer seats, too few candidates.
Fewer seats. Although, again, just to get us up to date with how this might shake out, the gap actually between Sinn Féin and maybe Fianna Fáil, or certainly Fine Gael, mightn't be that great in the end. Yeah,
I think Fianna Fáil look as if they might get 43 or 44 seats maximum, I think, and that depends if they take a seat in Galway East with Anne Rabbitte, which they look as if they might know. Fine Gael, I think, are going to be at about 38, and Sinn Féin, again, if they lose in Galway East, could be about 37. So, and of course Sinn Féin couldn't really have anticipated these huge surpluses. But it looks as if it's going to be very narrow in terms of seats anyway.
Yeah, as Fionn was saying, they left maybe 6 or 7 seats on the field behind them as a result of their candidate strategy.
It's got a certain redolence of US politics now, in the sense of winning the popular vote, but not necessarily...
No hanging chads or anything like that. All right, let's go back to Clare in the results centre.
Brian, thank you very much, and we're going to go to Dublin Central now and to Fine Gael's Paschal Donoghue, who is standing by. Paschal, I understand you're in the thick of it there. Mary Lou MacDonald has been elected and her surplus has been distributed. So how did that break down?
That surplus is, as you say, being allocated at the moment. I am very grateful to the people of Dublin Central for the support they have again offered to Fine Gael. And we're going to see now across the coming hours where both that surplus and the elimination of candidates, what effect that has in terms of how the remaining seats will be filled.
OK, the former Sinn Féin councillor, Christy Burke, he got most of that surplus from Mary Lou MacDonald, 37% of those votes. I note that you thank the people of your constituency for supporting Fine Gael. They supported you. They didn't support your running mate, who only got 584 first preferences.
Well, Deirdre Duffy is a fantastic candidate and has an amazing amount of experience that I believe would be a great addition to the Fine Gael parliamentary party and to Irish politics. But I think it is fair to say that if you look at the support they've offered our party overall, from a first preference point of view, our party has actually come second. Now, in fairness, we are a distant second behind a very strong performance from Sinn Fein. But as I speak to you, Claire, this is the fourth time I have been out here for many different elections for Fine Gael in Dublin Central. I've seen moments like this happen for other political parties, and from the point of view of my own party, as things stand at the moment, we'll come second in first preference votes. And that is something, again, that I want to thank the people of Dublin Central for.
Okay. Have you had a chance to think about how the campaign was run as Director of Elections? I mean, how do you feel it has gone?
Well, to win a third term in office, Claire, is a historically difficult feat. And the only political party that has done that in Ireland in recent political history was Fianna Fáil. And in order to do that, they did things with our economy that ultimately had a calamitous effect on the people of Ireland. If I look at where we stand now, at the start of this campaign there was a 12-point gap between ourselves and Fianna Fáil. A week ago there was a 6-point gap between ourselves and Fianna Fáil. And according to the graph that I saw on your show just a few moments ago, it's very likely now that ourselves and Fianna Fáil will be neck and neck with each other in terms of share of the popular vote. So if I look at our campaign overall, we did run it on the issues that I believe had us best positioned to try to win the election and to lead the next government. But any party facing into trying to win a third term of office is always going to find it a difficult challenge, and that proved to be the case as we worked our way through the campaign.
Talking about Brexit, as much as Fine Gael did, a waste of time, when we saw the exit poll telling us last night that only 1% of people's vote was influenced by Brexit.
So again, let's bear in mind that according to the figures you just showed me a moment ago, we will be tied in second place for a share of the popular vote for a party that has been 9 years in government. So I think we should all pause to form an assessment of how our campaign actually performed until we see how many TDs we have in the next Dáil. To answer your question regarding our identification of Brexit as an issue, the case we always made is Brexit's going to have a huge effect on the economy. It is the economy that will allow us to fund the improvements in public services. And I vividly remember the 2007 general election campaign and how completely detached it was from the fundamental economic and political reality that was facing Ireland then. I think as we approach the summer, while we're going to find out in the next day or two whether our approach was right in terms of us being the next biggest party in the next Dáil, I have no doubt at all that when we approach the summer we'll see Brexit as again the key issue in Irish politics.
Can I just ask you, and I know you want to get back to the count there, but what do you think Fine Gael should do with this result now? You've 21% of the vote. Where do you go from here with this?
Well, I heard your colleague there a moment ago, Gerard Howland, make the point about the need for Fine Gael to represent all communities. I'm going to find out shortly if the people of Dublin Central have been good enough to award me with a third term in Dáil Éireann. So I think the first thing that we have to do is reflect on what is the message the Irish people have given us here. I have a pretty good idea what it is in terms of the appetite for a change and the policy areas in which they want change from. I've always said that we're a party of the centre. That's not the same as being a party of the status quo. But clearly a lot of people in Ireland associate us with the status quo and feel that the status quo is not serving them. And we need to spend a bit of time understanding that even further, and then looking at from our manifesto and the engagement that we will have with other political parties, how we respond back to that. In terms of who we're going to engage with and when, we need to see who's going to be elected first, Claire, before we can give a definitive answer to that. But I want to again make clear that we don't believe that Sinn Féin should be in the next government. Leo has emphasised that, I think, as recently as a few hours ago. And I think his leadership of our party and the role he played in the debate, particularly in the final week, was decisive in our party arresting the trend that began in the first 2 weeks of the campaign and pulling the vote back to us, I think, in the final week.
OK, Paschal Donoghue, thank you for joining us there from Dublin Central. Let's take a look now at the latest count from Galway East. This is a three-seater. You can see the quota there. Sean Canny, independent, elected there on the first count, topping the poll with over 12,000. Ciarán Cannon, Fine Gael, next at close to 10,000. Anne Rabbitte, Fianna Fáil, 9,500 votes. Lewis O'Hara, Sinn Féin, a late entrant to the race, coming in just as nominations closed with 9,411 votes. Quite an extraordinary show there. 3 seats in Galway East. And now we move on to Dún Laoghaire. And this is the 6th count in Dún Laoghaire, and a man who was here in the last hour or so, Oisin Smith, getting elected for the Green Party at 12,500 votes. Jennifer Carroll McNeil, Fine Gael, is at 11,500. And then Richard Boyd Barrett doing very well on over 11,000. And I say doing very well because there was a moment in time during this campaign, Fionn Sheehan is beside me here, where Richard Boyd Barrett was somebody who people were wondering whether he might keep his seat. But he's doing very well there on that graphic.
A stellar performance from Richard. I think it was in your own debate where he was firing out sound bites to bait the band, and that probably gave him that boost in profile that he needed. Ultimately, what benefited him there as well is that Shane O'Brien of Sinn Féin is coming off such a low base that Richard Boyd Barrett is retaining that working class left wing seat that is in the constituency. He was getting squeezed by the Greens as well, let's remember, in this election, because he ultimately took the Green seat off them 10 years ago, the old Kieran Cuff seat. So he knew that the Greens were coming back. That was quite obvious, and he has benefited from the left wing surge because Sinn Féin aren't strong enough there.
The new Fine Gael candidate, Jennifer Carroll McNeil, doing well there. Mary Mitchell O'Connor is still in the hunt, but the Fianna Fáil candidate, Cormac Devlin, chasing there. Could he take Mary Mitchell O'Connor's seat? Is that possible?
Yeah, it's a very narrow gap there. I mean, all week long, the prevailing wisdom was that it would end up being 1-1-1-1, so it'd be Greens, People Before Profit, Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael. Now, Fianna Fáil have underperformed in Dublin, and Fine Gael have done a bit better than was expected. Shane O'Brien of Sinn Féin will now determine the outcome, whether that's going to be
next?
Cormac. Now, Mary Mitchell and Cormac both have kind of Dún Laoghaire town bases, so it's hard to see how there's any discrimination there. What he will do, though, is push Richard Boyd Barrett over the top.
OK, count 7 will be interesting. Fionn, thank you. Back now to Brian.
Thanks very much indeed, Claire. We can go to the count centre in Cork South Central because standing by is the Taoiseach Minister for Foreign Affairs, Simon Coveney of Fine Gael. Thanks for talking to us on the programme, Mr Coveney. Just first of all, in relation to your own count there, we're hearing the reports that it looks like it's no change in Cork South Central, that you and the other outgoing deputies will be returned.
Yeah, no, look, I think Cork South Central is traditionally one of the most competitive constituencies in the country, but I think after the tallies this morning, it has become one of the most predictable in this election. And that means that Fianna Fáil will hold 2 seats here in Micheál Martin and Michael McGrath. Fine Gael will hold on comfortably enough in terms of my seat. And Donnacha Lera for Sinn Féin has topped the poll, which is a really good performance by him. But it is part of a trend that we've seen nationally.
Nationally, Fine Gael's share of the first preference vote is standing with just 6 constituencies to give us first count results. It's standing on 21%. I think that's even worse than the performance back in 2002. What went wrong?
Well, look, I think it's going to take us a bit of time to really get our heads around that and to look at some of the data that comes out after this election. But I think a number of things. First of all, any party that tries to get a 3rd term in a row in government is going to find it very difficult to do that. I think there was a restlessness in the electorate in this campaign looking for something completely different to the two big parties. That's undoubtedly the case. And I think it took everybody by surprise, including Sinn Fein themselves, who, if they had known now, if they'd known 6 weeks ago what they know now, they certainly would have run many, many more candidates. So, we'll have to wait and see. But certainly this is not a good result from the Fine Gael perspective. But actually, it is a result that I think did, over the last number of days of the campaign, arrest a fall that was clearly happening in the first 2 weeks of the campaign. And what we have now is three parties on a very similar vote across the country, Fine Gael, Fianna Fáil and Sinn Fein. And we're going to have to wait until, I suspect, well into tomorrow before we know what that means in terms of seat numbers, because there will be a lot of seats that will be won or lost by probably less than 100 votes later on this evening.
And just before we break for the news at 9 o'clock, does this result now that's looming into view mean that Fine Gael has to be open to all options in terms of government formation?
No, I think Fine Gael will remain true to its commitments during this election campaign. We are willing to talk to anybody, any other political party, with the exception of Sinn Fein, with a view to forming a government. I think it's going to take many weeks to form a government, but Fine Gael's position has been clear. We got elected, I think, on a mandate to follow through on the commitments that we made during the campaign, and we will be sticking to those commitments.
Okay, we'll just a final word was
the one thing I would say, Brian, that I think that you might find, or that you might find a talking point, and certainly I think this will gather pace in the coming days, and that is that I think it is very unlikely that we will see the next government supported by a confidence and supply agreement. I think if you look at the consequences of a confidence and supply agreement on Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael in this election, where Fianna Fáil are seen by many as a party that wasn't either in government or in opposition. The idea that that would be repeated now, I think, is very unlikely. And I suspect Fine Gael members will be very strong in their view that we should do everything we can to form a responsible and progressive government. And we should talk to all parties, with the exception of Sinn Féin, to do that. But if it's not possible for Fine Gael to be in a government, I think our members will want us to be very active in opposition.
Okay, well, that's very interesting, and that is something we can pick up perhaps in our discussions in the hours ahead. But for the moment, Simon Coveney in Cork, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Remember, you can keep up to date with comprehensive 24-hour rolling coverage of the election 2020 results on the RTE News website and the News Now app, including individual live trackers for every constituency in the country. We'll break now for the 9 o'clock news, and we'll talk to you after that.
Good evening and welcome. On the 9 o'clock news tonight, the Sinn Fein surge. More than 20 TDs elected so far, but final make-up of Dáil will go to last seats.
This is no longer a two-party system. It's a statement that people want a different type of government.
Independent TD Shane Ross, the first ministerial casualty, but others are under threat. Fresh weather warnings issued by Met Éireann. There's snow and ice on the way. And in sport, Galway triumph over Donegal as Tyrone edge out Kerry in the Alliance League. Counting is continuing in election 2020 with an historic surge in support for Sinn Fein, seeing the party win 22 seats on the first count, some with large surpluses. However, the final make-up of Dáil Éireann remains too close to call. The Fine Gael leader Leo Varadkar said forming a new government would be a challenge and again ruled out a coalition with Sinn Fein. The Fianna Fáil leader Micheál Martin appeared to leave the door open, saying the important thing was that there was compatibility in the programme for government. 12 hours into the count, here's a look at the current number of seats won by each party. And if we look here, Sinn Féin now has 24 seats. The Fine Gael has 1, Fianna Fáil 1, but that's Sean O'Farrell, the Count Corliss seat. Solidarity People Before Profit 1, the Green Party has 3 seats and the Independents have 4. Now, if we look at the state of the parties, the share of the vote nationally, we can see Sinn Féin topping with 23.8%, Fianna Fáil next 21.6%, Fine Gael has 20.8%, Independents 11.5%, Green Party is on 7.6%, Labour on 5%, the Social Democrats 3.4%, Solidarity People Before Profit 3%, A&2 1.9% and other 1.4%. And if we compare then these results from those of 2016, the percentage share and the change since 2016, Sinn Féin is up 10.5%, the Greens are up 4.7%, A&2 up 1.9%. Fine Gael down 5.1%, Fianna Fáil down 2.3%, Labour down 2%, Solidarity People Before Profit down 1.6%, the Independents down 2.4%, Social Democrats 0.1% and others minus 3.5%. And with the first of our reports tonight, here's our political correspondent, Paul Cunningham.
The Sinn Féin leader arrived into the RDS having already spoken to the Greens and Social Democrats about possibly forming a government. Mary Lou McDonald said Ireland's political landscape had been transformed and Sinn Féin would play its part.
I do not accept the exclusion or talk of excluding our party, a party that represents now almost a quarter of the electorate. I think that is fundamentally undemocratic.
The RDS here in Dublin is emblematic of that Sinn Féin surge. Of the 5 counts taking place here, Sinn Féin topped the poll in 4 constituencies and came second in the 5th. It begs a very big question. Where are all those transfers going to go?
The ongoing counts suggest Fianna Fáil will be the largest party in the next Dáil. That raises a big question. Will Fianna Fáil continue to rule out going into government with Sinn Féin?
I know you're going to put that question to me. I made it very clear on a day like today. I respect how the people have voted. We're going to hear the people, we're listening to the people. We don't know where the seats are tomorrow, but what I'm saying very strongly to you, putting down a very strong marker, once policies and principles don't change overnight, and that for any government to sustain, the policy platform has to be coherent, there has to be synergy in terms of that policy platform. It's got to work.
Fine Gael's leader was emphatic on the Sinn Féin question. It's simply not going to happen.
My view on this has been exactly what I said during the campaign, and what I said during the campaign and what my party said in the campaign wasn't a tactic or a strategy, it was what we honestly believed, and for us, a coalition with Sinn Féin is not an option.
independent candidates from rural constituencies could form an important part in any coalition. And many argue government formation should be swift and involve everyone.
What the country needs is stability, and you know we have Brexit on the horizon. It wasn't an election issue, but the trade talks are hugely important for every person in this country, and it's very important that we have a government in place.
The Green Party would likely be in any coalition mix. However, its focus for the moment at least is on the ongoing counts.
We're hoping to get into double figures. If we can get a team of that sort of number in, I think we could have a hugely positive role in the next Dáil.
For Sinn Féin, the celebrations have already begun. For smaller parties, their fate won't be clarified until the later counts. Paul Cunningham, RTE News.
The first seat in election 2020 was taken by Donncha O'Leary of Sinn Fein, who topped the poll in a constituency that included Micheál Martin and Simon Coveney. Sinn Fein won seats with large surpluses in many constituencies, in some cases returning candidates to Dáil Éireann who didn't win in the local elections last June.
Some of Sinn Féin's newest faces. Brand new TDs that Mary Lou MacDonald will lead into the 33rd Dáil, in what will be Sinn Féin's largest Dáil representation in modern history. In Louth, voters returned 2 Sinn Féin TDs, similarly in Dublin Mid-West, and the constituencies of Donegal and Cavan Monaghan look likely to do the same. Maurice Quinlivan in Limerick City, like many of his elected colleagues, topped the poll with thousands of votes to spare.
It's a record vote here in Waterford, so it's overwhelming in many ways.
Sinn Féin candidates outpolled both the leaders of Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil. Donncha O'Leary getting more first preference votes than Micheál Martin in Cork South Central. Paul Donnelly outpolling Leo Varadkar in Dublin West.
For me, it's not about beating anybody. It's about ensuring that the voice of the people is heard.
Scores of Sinn Féin councillors lost their seats in last year's local elections, but some, like Sorcha Clark in Longford Westmeath, now look certain to win Dáil seats. And in Mayo, Wexford and Clare, where Sinn Féin haven't held a seat in around 100 years, that's changing.
It wasn't easy for many people to vote. Many people changed their traditional voting patterns.
Sinn Féin only ran 42 candidates, so was never going to be able to form a government on its own. But the talks with smaller parties have already begun.
Our door is open. We want to work with other parties to build a better Ireland.
Whether Sinn Féin will get into government now depends on others agreeing to work with them. Sharon Tobin, RTE News.
Well, let's talk now to our political correspondent, Micheál Lehane, who joins us from the Results Centre here at RTE. Micheál, I think it's safe to say that even Sinn Féin didn't foresee the scale of this surge.
No, the scale is unprecedented and they're winning seats in places they never won it before. They are winning seats too with candidates who lost their council seats not too long ago at all. And I suppose the ultimate question now, though, is where will it all end up? Because we know that those Sinn Féin surpluses are absolutely huge. There's even a realisation perhaps that 6 seats were left behind by not having enough candidates, but their surpluses are determining the fate in many constituencies of other candidates. And we saw that in the last hour or so, particularly in Dublin South Central, where Breed Smith of People Before Profit was elected off the back of a Sinn Féin surplus. Right now, as the results come in here and they're analysed, and this will change as the night goes on, but it looks like Fianna Fáil could finish with 42 seats and Sinn Féin and Fine Gael finish level on 37 each. That's the best guess as things stand at the moment, but there's a lot of variables at work there, and it could be tomorrow or even Tuesday before we know the final figure. The Greens, as it stands, look like they will get 10 seats or possibly more.
And what does this all mean for the formation of the next government? We saw Leo Varadkar again ruling out coalition with Sinn Féin. Micheál Martin seemed to be softening his position slightly.
I think it's a complex picture, isn't it? And there are going to be extensive conversations taking place now. And already there have been hints. We've heard Micheál Martin appearing to take a much softer line around the Sinn Féin question than he has up to now. Caution urged on that from many within Fianna Fáil, not to overread that perhaps tonight. We've had a much stronger line from Leo Varadkar saying that he will not engage in talks that could ultimately lead to a coalition with Sinn Féin. I think this is going to be a lengthy process, despite initial indications perhaps that things could get underway quite swiftly. And the word coming back is not to take anything too seriously until the Dáil resumes on Thursday week, and it will only be after that point before real discussions will begin. Because